I noticed in the last week, the air, and there's really no other way to say this, but the air feels very thick, really heavy. And the last couple days, we had to come indoors. I mean, it was pretty intolerable.
ADAPT 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output. But very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on this planet. Very interesting show coming up. I have Kate Hart, the Radical Gardener, with me. You can find her work at theradicalgardener.net. Sorry, it's not it's just radicalgardener.net, katehart.com. And today we also wanted to talk about vibrational frequency in not only the body, but plant growth, and also what she's been working with, therapeuticsoundandwellness.com. Today's show is about staying in the moment and making the best of what your life has brought to you right now, the culmination, the accruing of the knowledge, the things that you thought were setbacks that have brought you to this moment right now. We're going to talk about earth changes, sounds in the sky, the intensifying grand solar minimum, and really solutions for all of these earth changes that we're experiencing together on this planet. I'm doing urban gardening, she's doing urban gardening, and we wanted to talk about these different solutions moving forward. And it's more a roundtable discussion on, what we're feeling intuitively across this planet. Everybody is feeling that something is just amiss right now, and a lot of people cannot put their fingers on what these changes are. We're going to try to discuss a few of these things, and as all of us have some little secret, special kind of talent in our lives, I wanted to bring this to you because we're talking about sound vibration, but Kate was multi-Grammy nominated, also a blues singer in the 1960s. We wanted to talk a little bit about this because we all have hidden talents. And how do we bring this together to create solutions moving forward in this grand solar minimum? Because looking over the news feeds just for the last couple of weeks, if you haven't seen the uptick in volcanoes, the never-ending hailstorms, the never-ending lightning storms, the never-ending flooding that you're seeing across this northern hemisphere, and then Australia has suddenly been plunged into an instant deep freeze. These things are going to intensify from this year forward. What we're seeing right now is really just the beginning of these earth changes. And if we go back in more ancient historical cycles and we use planetary geometry and we really look back into the past at some of these more ancient cultures, I think they hold the answers. They have the keys to unlock some of what we're going to see moving forward in terms of earth changes. So, Kate, I welcome you to the show. Thank you for your time today. And I know our listeners are going to get an enormous amount of information about preparing for all these changes that are coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was really a great intro. And I especially love when you said, it's not you, it's the sun. It really puts it in perspective. So that was great. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, we do want to talk about that, too, because as you and I growing up through our lives, we've seen the bait and switch occur. When I was growing up and I first started learning about these, changes in our climate, it was always CO2 and it was global warming and everything was going to warm and it was just going to get hotter and hotter and snow would be a thing of the past. And then suddenly they switched it, and now it was climate change, and then it was extreme weather, and everything we had heard for the first 10, 15, 18 years about warm, warm, warm. It didn't follow their model, so they just suddenly changed it. So this is something we can both talk about because we've been around long enough to see that bait and switch go on, especially in terms of CO2 creating all the problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can remember, I'm 68 years old, so I can remember in the 70s when we were talking about, a possibility of ice age and cooling temperatures. I mean, do you remember that? I don't know how old you are, but I remember that clearly. And then all of a sudden, the narrative changed, and it never felt right to me. I don't have a science background. I do go by intuition and doing a lot of research and connecting dots, and it just never sounded true to me. And and I would look out my window. I mean, it just didn't seem like that's what was happening. So, and I always believed that the Earth really has a mind of its own, and we're pretty insignificant. So I don't know. And it didn't seem like the temperatures were changing in the solar system the way that they said they were. So the other planets weren't warming up. So if they weren't, why were we?
Yeah, now that definitely has changed, where all the planets are showing significant energetic changes. Now, whether these energetic changes also equal temperature changes, but what they're seeing even out in like Neptune, they're seeing the poles are starting to glow more, just like we have the aurora on our own Earth here, where they're starting to see planet-wide, solar system-wide changes in the heliosphere. If we even want to take it further out into the galactic plane, if you will, when we get out to the very edge of our heliosphere, this is also changing. So you really have to wonder, I mean, these Birkeland currents are coming in from other star systems or other galactic quadrants that are powering our star. So you really need to wonder what the changes are going on further abreast of our own solar system, further out to the edge of its electromagnetic boundary. And then also the changes, like just the area of space that we're traveling through that's more energetically, let's say, ionized or electrified, right, if you will. There's just a lot of changes far beyond our own sun and our own Earth and our own solar system. But if you look around, there's just so many changes going on within the galactic area as well.
Is science interested in that at all? I mean,
well, the amount of galactic cosmic rays that are coming in that are also increasing. There's two types of cosmic rays. We have the cosmic rays that generally they come from the sun. They're in our solar system here. They get cosmic rays. And then we have the galactic cosmic rays, which are quite different. They're a different animal altogether. They're coming from outside of our solar system. But again, it's just when our sun is more highly output state, if you will, our magnetosphere is much, much tighter. And this does not allow cosmic rays to bombard our atmosphere and create all these clouds that we're seeing now. So when our sun goes into a decreased activity state, our magnetosphere weakens, and we have a huge uptick in cosmic rays and galactic cosmic rays that are allowed to, what would normally be deflected, shall we say, is now allowed to enter our atmosphere. Well, this is the same with the heliosphere, far out. What our what the sun's creating as a bubble around our solar system itself further out. This is also weakening, so more galactic cosmic rays are coming in through that as well. So we're getting, that's why there's just so many galactic cosmic rays and such a giant uptick now, is because not only is our own magnetosphere just in the local system from our sun to the Earth, but then when we go further out to that boundary of the heliosphere, that's also becoming very weak, and so many more galactic cosmic rays are coming in. So yeah, people are studying this, and they're finding, especially with Ulysses, these different spacecraft that were further out, Voyager, they're coming out to these boundary levels now that are like, well, now we can really see why the galactic cosmic rays are increasing at such a rate.
Where do you do your gardening? Where do you do your urban garden?
Currently, I'm at 24 degrees north latitude, and I'm in a city environment. I actually moved further toward the mountain area on the very periphery of a city so I could get this experience. And what I found so far is it's very much more difficult to, let's say, container garden on a balcony than it would be to just plant in a soil condition that you're used to just planting in the ground. Very different, right. Very, very difficult.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I'm asking is because, just where I am, I'm 10 miles north of Detroit. So I'm in one of the suburbs of Detroit. And I noticed in the last week, the air, and there's really no other way to say this, but the air feels very thick, really heavy. And the last couple days, we had to come indoors. I mean, it was pretty intolerable. So that's what I asked. I mean, have you felt just being in the garden growing plants, are you feeling that there's a real shift in just how it feels?
I could say yes, but I'm out here in Asia, so there's more localized, I don't know if it's ash or something in the air, but the air is a little different this year, especially with the dust storms that came rolling off of China.
Oh, okay.
I mean, those dust storms blew from Tibet, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, coming east all the way out into the Pacific. And then there's this strange weather front over Asia today that plummet. Temperatures we're going to use Celsius here. So the normal temperature in the last few days, it's been 35 to 37 degrees, which is in the 90s. And then today it's down in the 70s. I mean, there was a 20-degree Fahrenheit temperature drop overnight, and this weather front that's coming through right now is going to keep it as such and even drop it a little further over the next day or so. So, yeah, these changes are all there. There's just people are also, I talked to the old timers because, where I moved out, I moved right to the very edge of the city that is bordering on where the mountains start. And when you go hiking out my back door, I'm also doing two things. I'm learning how to forage in the forest with a couple old timers. At the same time, I'm trying to grow things on my balcony. So between doing my videos, I try to work on the garden. But anyway, going back to talking about the old timers, the farmers are around here. They all have their little plots of land, up in the hills here, about maybe 300 to 400 meters, about 1,000 to 1,200 feet. And there's a lot of old families that have land up here that have had it for 200 years or so. Anyway, I talked to them, and they also say that something's changed. The sun's hotter, their plants aren't growing as well. The weather's the rain feels different, and they also see something different happening around with their, I guess, the gardening mechanisms they have. And especially this winter was really much colder than usual. And they talked about when their grandparents. You got to understand that these people are well older than you. They're in their 80s, early 90s, and they're talking about when their grandparents, when it got really cold during their grandparents' time out here in Asia.
Well, I'm in a part of Michigan where the lousy weather really misses us. I'm in the south. Of course, it's like the southeastern part of Michigan. So we're very protected by the lakes. Where we sit. It's like we kind of sit in a little donut almost. So definitely the ambient temperature, like it was colder longer because things were so cold around us. If you go, I think I'm sitting on like the 41st latitude, but if you go up to like 43, I actually did a YouTube show on it. If you just, each time you go up a degree, it was a drastic difference in the weather. I mean, there were parts of Michigan that got, something like 515 inches of snow last year, and we got 50. So and we haven't, we don't have tornadoes that come through this area. There hasn't been any flooding. The temperatures have been for the last week and a half, couple of weeks have been in the 80s, which is a little warmer than May usually is here. So the weather's been pretty good. I've never had everything grow as well as I have this year. Now I'm doing things a little bit differently this year, and I do a lot of container gardening, a lot of, buckets, you name it. If I can grow something in it, I do. But, I did a different kind of soil mix. I use sound now. I plant according to the Rudolf Steiner calendar. I mean, I really buckled down and tried to do it all, not just right, but, use some cutting edge things. And it made a huge difference. I mean, I have so much food growing, I don't know what I'm going to do with it all. So, it's been good. It's good so far.
Yeah, and that brings back to the point, when we're talking about these changes in the grand solar minimum and moving forward with your own food production, and just as not in a fear or paranoia-based thing, but just being able to grow your own healthier food compared to what you're going to be buying in a supermarket, regardless of all these changes going on across the planet, which are plentiful to say the least. Just having this skill to grow your own food so you can supplement and have some of your own fresh vegetables, etc., where you know where it was grown, where it came from. There's such a huge difference in your life in terms of quality food that you're putting in your body.
Well, not just that, David. It's really about, I think people really, to have a disconnect about the food that you eat and what it takes to feed you, I think is a dirty, rotten shame. I always say to people, you really need to know what it takes to feed your fat ass. I mean, it's really true. I remember when I was, I lived on Harson's Island before I moved to this city, which is an island that sits in the middle of Lake St. Clair. And I had 18 raised beds and a produce stand. And so I grew a lot of foods that I wouldn't normally grow. Like watermelon is a luxury. It takes a lot of room and, it takes forever to grow. That watermelon, it takes forever to grow a watermelon. And, when you see what it takes to grow some of these vegetables and fruits, you get such a healthy respect for the work that goes into it, just from nature's point of view. And so that is something I think people really need to see and really experience. And if you do it yourself, you understand how much work it is, and you're not going to waste food. You're not going to throw food out. You're going to learn how to cook. I mean, it really is the way to go. In Russia, when they went through their when the whole kind of meltdown of the system, when after Gorbachev, the people would have starved to death, and the reason they didn't is because everybody had a little garden. And when you look around, nobody has a little garden around here.
Yeah, and there's a concerted effort in the United States, at least, to outlaw gardens, especially in your front yard. So the governments are working actively to try to reduce the amount of gardeners that there are in the United States. And you've seen again and again, if you go to Mike Adams' site over there, Natural News, how many stories are coming out of people being arrested for raw milk, and whether it be goat milk, cow milk, whatever it might be. They're trying to shut down the raw dairy farmers. And also when people get to the level, when you were talking about 18 raised beds and growing a lot of food, once people reach this level, it seems that the county or the city or state government will come in and then shut them down because they're producing too much food. And this seems to be the opposite of what we should be encouraging at the moment. I mean, when you have all this extra food, where are you going to store it? Talking about opportunities in the grand solar minimum, when we have all this extra food that you're growing, the shelf life on a fresh vegetable is short. So how do you turn that into something with longer term food storage? So how do you take, let's say, a squash, a zucchini? Those are very watery, so they go bad rather quickly. So how do you turn that into something that can be kept for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months down the way? You're going to have to dehydrate that. You're going to have to do something. But this is a whole niche in itself, right, on how to prepare that food.
That's right. Yeah, that is what I'm doing. So you can dehydrate everything. I have my dehydrator set up in my garage, which we're actually turning my garage into a greenhouse at the end of the summer, and continue with the growing thing. But I just start. I'm going to start dehydrating. Actually, this weekend you dehydrate lettuce, spinach, kale, all of it, because you can throw it into soups. All you need is water, and so you still have your nutrients. And so that's how I'm doing it. And that's how I'm dealing with it. So I have a place where I keep all my food. I've been, prepping food for 10 years. I lived on an island, and when you live on an island, you make sure that you have more than what you need, because we were iced in a lot. So, but I've always had a sense to prep. And so, I have a place where I keep all of my stuff. And as I dehydrate and put things in jars and bags, I just take it over to where I keep everything. And that way I will keep my food, and I can benefit from what I'm growing.
Yeah, and if I could share a story out here in Taiwan about watermelons at the moment. I don't know if you're seeing this on the news or not, but the police are stationed across the fields because the prices of melons in Asia have risen so much that people are coming in and stealing melons out of the fields at night. So what they're doing is that police are stationed in all the fields right now, and they have checkpoints coming in and out of the melon growing areas. And we saw the very same thing back in 2008 and 2009 when nighttime harvesting took place of rice down in Thailand, where again they had to put the military out in the rice fields to prevent marauders coming in with their own harvesting gear at night and coming through and clearing out an entire field. And then when they woke up in the morning, hey, the whole field had been harvested and somebody drove away with all their rice. But here we are, 2018, and we have police in the fields in Taiwan preventing theft of watermelons and different types of melons. That's kind of a scary thing that the prices are rising that much where they're putting police. Now, what happens when the shortages really start to come or when food prices really start to spike? This is the whole thing why we really need to get some solutions and start to get ready to grow our own some of our own produce.
Well, this is what, we have a neighborhood list that's online. It's called Nextdoor or something. Lots of neighborhoods have access to it. And so I went up on it a few months ago, and I said, I booked time at the library and for people to come who want to talk about prepping as a community. And I kept it really light. I didn't talk about a solar minimum, none of that. Remember, I'm in Michigan, it's like, people aren't going to just believe you. They want you to prove it. So that's just the Midwest. So anyways, the smart ass remarks I got back from that, it's like, as long as I can go to the grocery store, I'm not going to have to worry about food shortages. I mean, it was nutty. So I was so discouraged by that. And then, about a week ago, I thought, I cannot let this go. I have to try again. So the way I've approached it is I'm offering gardening classes, and everybody jumped on that. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing gardening classes for, our neighborhood and teaching people how to grow in a small area, how easy it is, and they're very encouraged.
It's interesting just the change in the lexicon, the way people perceive your message. It's almost like prepping has been turned into one of those trigger words that that they set up psychologically. When you hear some words like conspiracy, you turn off. Aliens, you turn off.
Right.
They program people through their whole lives to turn off when they hear certain words. Prepping seems to fall into that same category now versus.
Yes, you're right. It does. So, so that was a lesson for me, because, I can be pretty forthright about things. And so I just, I thought, okay, I just need to come in here with, not come in here with a hammer and come in with kind of a soft light and just, just share what I know. Listen, there's other gardeners know a lot more than me, but I know how to grow and keep it simple and so people don't feel overwhelmed. And the first thing people ask is, oh my gosh, it's just so much work. And I always tell them, just start with one raised bed. Just one raised bed. If you grow lettuce all summer, you've got something to eat. Just start with a corner in your backyard. If you don't have a backyard, just get some pots. You can go get those half barrels from Home Depot. I think they're $8. Put some gravel in the bottom so it has some good drainage. Do a good soil mixture where you have peat moss and your compost and your soil. You do a third of each. You put it in the pot and you are ready to go. And so it can be really, really simple, but people are overwhelmed in lives that already feel overwhelming. So what I'm trying to do and doing it on my YouTube channel is you can do this. This is really simple. Let's just start simple. Okay, here's some good seeds. Here's where you should buy the good seeds. Here's where you go to get inexpensive soil. Here's what you do. So I'm just really keeping it basic, and people are gardening. I can tell you 10, 15 people have been influenced by what I've said, and they're gardening. So I'm really proud of that.